Kendall, the meeting is yours, Drake.
Hi, Luke.
Hey, yeah, we're here. Is that Marquita?
Yep.
You know it.
Sweet.
I'm Drake Eubank, current acting chair of this committee, and from Eugene, consumer survivor advocate since about probably the late 80s, and way too experienced at this to waste a bunch more of your time. All right, next, maybe Marquita.
Hey, everybody. Marquita Corley, Vice Chair OCAC. I'm excited to be here. Also, I need to become a member of the subcommittee. I noticed that I'm not written down as members of the subcommittees. I'll talk to somebody about how I do that. And I'll pass it to JD.
Hello, everybody. It's JD, they, them, and turtle for pronouns in the Springfield, Eugene area. And I will pass it off to Luke.
Hi, it's good to be with you. It was a nice Thanksgiving, and it seems like ages since we've been together. But we're here as they, them, us, and we today, and really hopeful the momentum and keeping it going. A lot of good things happening today, and I appreciate being part of this.
Recording in progress.
And we hear.
Rose, would you like to go next?
Luke, are you done?
Yep. Yeah, I called on Walter.
Oh, hey. Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Walter Bailey, Officer of Recovery and Resilience, person with lived and living experience. Grateful for another day to see you all, and it's December. Yeah. I will pass it, and grateful to see you all, actually. And I just saw, was there another member that who hasn't been called that as an OCAC member? Well, I'll just call Sharm. How about that?
Thanks,
Cool.
Walter. Hey, everyone. Sharmley Nataraja, she, her pronouns, community engagement analyst for the Office of Recovery and Resilience. And I'll pass it to Kendall.
Hello, my name is Kendall Burns. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the peer run respite coordinator in the Office of Recovery and Resilience, and a person with lived and living experience. I'll pass it over to Medea.
Good afternoon, everyone. Medea Williams, she, her, ella. I am the Behavioral Health Metrics and Committee Manager. I'm here supporting the Office of Recovery and Resilience team and you all OCAC members. So thank you for allowing me to be here with you all today.
Rose, would you like to go next?
Sure. Rose Kunow, East Multnomah County. Happy to be here. I haven't been around for a while, but I'm back. Thanks.
Hey, Rose.
Hi. Barb, do you want to go?
I think Barb just came back in. Barb, are you there? Or she's trying to come back in. There she goes.
Barb, where are you? Really?
There she is. Hi, Barb. You want to check in, Barb?
I am here, just going between devices. Sorry about that, but I made the reverberation stop, so I'm sorry about that if anybody other than me heard it, which I think they did. So hi, this is Barb Rainish, she, her pronouns, guest here and calling in from Multnomah County. And is there anybody left? Rose, did you go? You went because
yes,
you called
I
on me?
did go, and I'm sorry you missed it because it was very informative.
Maybe we can check in this weekend.
Okay.
All right, that's everybody, I think. Do we have the minutes from the last meeting that can be put up?
Gotcha. Okay, can everybody see that? Oops. Can you guys see it? You want me to make it smaller or bigger?
Bigger. Good.
Go back to the top. Meeting from 11:05.
It did not show you in attendance, Luke.
I was at last month's meeting.
Okay. Duly noted.
Yeah. Thank you. Katie.
No problem. The meeting discusses various aspects of the Oregon Consumer Advisory Council and its legislative efforts. Director Fink, an experienced advocate, leads the discussion on submitting legislative proposals and the challenges faced in getting support for their constituency. Kevin, another participant, explains the conventional process of submitting bills to the legislature. The group discusses the importance of having direct access to legislative council and the need for better representation in behavioral health matters. They also touch on upcoming legislative concepts, including funding for peer centers of excellence and workforce development. The meeting highlights the need for more peer involvement in the system and discusses strategies for engaging with legislators and state officials. Throughout the discussion, there is an emphasis on the importance of timely action given the approaching legislative session. Motion. Makita put a motion in to schedule a special meeting for legislation, benefits, and human rights with invitations sent to Jaime Hines and Rob Nos. Luke seconds, passed unanimously. Will somebody else read from there? Yes, no. Okay. Action items. Drake mentioned the need to submit legislative proposals before the session starts. Digi mentioned organizing an advocacy day in March to meet with legislators. Kevin suggested reaching out to Representative Rob Moss staff and other pertinent folks to discuss OCAC legislative intent. Drake mentioned the need to prepare amendment language for existing bills related to your centers of excellence and workforce funding. Like you mentioned, creating a spreadsheet for the Pure Apocalypse conference planning. Then there was public comment, and that was the end. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended with weeks of attendance.
I'll second.
I'm in favor.
Folks want to put a green check mark? Drake, are you in favor of the?
I'm in favor. Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting to the reaction screen.
All right. You're all right. You're good. Okay. Meeting minutes pass. And I'll turn it back over to you, Drake.
Okay, just as a general comment in relation to all the things we are working on, in particular, the thing that's going on now is trying to get Gilser-Boyne's administrative aid for health to show up to one of our meetings. We would likely schedule a special meeting where they would appear. The other is to get Rob Nose's office to take a look at what we're doing also, but we kind of think that he has Kevin's stuff on his agenda, so we don't want to be too competitive there because Kevin kind of got there first, but he is the behavioral health subcommittee member emeritus, or yeah, I think he's going to lead and direct that committee. So I did want to talk about the last special meeting that we had, which we don't have minutes for, I don't think, which Jamie showed up, as well as Robert Lee, who is the government affairs person for behavioral health. And we tried to get an idea. We got a website essentially showing the things that the division is asking for, and most of those are not really in the areas that we as a council would normally be particularly interested in. There was a very few things actually, and most of their asks were around other parts of the system and other law changes that they needed to do maintenance on existing laws, etc. It was not a very broad list nor a very consumer relevant list of items. It was kind of wishy-washy that way, in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. So we approached them and asked them both, how the division would react to our per diem prior authorization and housing legislation efforts. And they said they couldn't support anything that wasn't already in the governor's budget. It had already been pre-agreed on, which is the standard response. But they generally seemed favorable and seemed to see the sense in what we were trying to do, because it actually does cover all the councils and not just the consumer council. If the per diem stuff has changed, prior authorization of course covers everybody in the health plan. And the housing issue is one that should be on everybody's front burner, because they're really trying to examine right now what the usefulness of the social determinants of health money going out to the CCOs is, and the health related services money. And there was public comment today in the Medicaid Advisory Committee on how those programs are actually being implemented. And so I'm assuming that there's going to be some recommendations to changes, which we may want to be in on, because those things have been rolled out and been generously funded and then rolled back to some degree. And this is something that Laura Rose is an expert on, which we might want to have her attend at some point in the near future before they start making adjustments to any legislation. We do still have a chance to participate in amendments. We're beyond the pre-session loading of any legislation we might have. So we're basically going to try to insinuate ourselves into the offices of a couple people or bring something on our own through legislative council. So that's pretty much where we're at, and where those conversations, the special meeting went. And Marquita and I spent a long time discussing on our own, with permission, the configuration of how that ask should look for the per diem stuff and all the things that might be required. And I can talk about that later as we go on. That's pretty much the overview of everything since the last meeting, the last regular meeting. So, all right. I've actually stuck in the chat the budget or the agenda that I was it's fairly simple. It's just these are the things that are currently on our plate besides benefits and human rights. It might be noted, since it does include human rights, that Preston Berman in the state hospital has succeeded in filing a class action suit. There's also something been filed by the Mental Health Association of Oregon that I don't have the details of. If anybody can add those details by
Great. Marquita has her hand up.
Okay, thank you. Could you keep an eye on that, JD? Because I really am pretty blind, and this phone is kind of hard to manipulate to get from screen to screen.
Marquita, you're up.
I was wondering when we were going to connect again, Drake, so we can actually write, or have you started writing the bill for the per diem?
I've written down the things that we want out of it, that it, you know, and then hope with the idea that the legislative council, with any degree of assistance and interactive dialogue, that they can actually particularize and figure out the best way through for those things, you know, how to word them, what particular other laws to attach them to. But the basic list of things that I have, I can enumerate them verbally right now if you want, or I can wait until after you're done.
No, that was my question.
Okay, well, one of them is the per diem has to be non-wages, non-income based. We want it to resemble the legislature's reimbursement for expenses. We consider the rationale for this to be because they're already means testing for eligibility for it. So they need to simply make the bar different for the eligibility for those payments. And if they have a problem with giving blanket exemption to everybody, that they at the very least should make a special exemption for people that means test under, you know, $25,000 or $20,000, something that wouldn't knock people off their Medicaid by taking the payments the state gives out for committees. Other than that, giving them that framework, that's most of what we would be asking for, with the idea that they could fill in the details that we need. We would take language, the last piece would be in terms of the IRS and the Department of Revenue and the, you know, the people in Oregon that would want it to be income no matter what. The language in Measure 118, I don't know if people are familiar with it, the legislative or the initiative that was to give everybody a kickback or a refund from taxes. The way that they structured that and put language in order to, there's a section in that particular law that they proposed. There's a section in that that keeps people from having it impact their SNAP benefits, their medical, you know, the things that are otherwise means tested and can be taken away if you make too much money. And they had a provision in that legislation for a process with both the IRS and the Department of Revenue in Oregon to remove that particular liability so that people would not be liable for the refunds, you know, as in it wouldn't count as income and couldn't throw them out of benefits. So, and those are the main points that would go into the legislative council to see what they could do with it, and also the main points that would be shopped. I mean, if we can get something I can make it look a little bit like a law and submit a model and make it look legalistic, but it wouldn't be as good as a actual lawyer working for the legislature. But I can use something like that to shop it with Representative Nose's office and Gelser-Boyne, who seem to be the main mental health advocates in the legislature for us this time. And that's everything for that. That's what I have so far. I wasn't able to get completely written down and out to you guys, so I'm a little bit challenged for that right now.
I'll share my list of cons with you too.
The other part of it is we definitely want to try to get both the representatives from those offices into one of our meetings quickly, you know, as soon as possible, to talk with them about everything we're working on. So go ahead, Marquita, if you have stuff you want to add verbally right now, that's fine. Am I still on?
Yeah.
Did you hear, Marquita? Marquita's still on. That's the kind of stuff I can't see without going through two more screens and getting rid of the chat.
Her microphone isn't coming on, which makes me wonder if she's with us.
Okay, well, when she comes back, she can knock down some of that stuff.
Was you asking me something, Drake? Sorry about that.
Yeah, you said you had cons, and I asked if you wanted to verbalize any of them right now.
It's not on my paper at home, but a few that I can remember. One that it inhibits people that's on SSI who serves on the council from them being able to even get the stipend because it's not per diem. So it affects their SSI, it affects Medicare, and also for individuals working, it puts us in a higher tax bracket. And we working as peers. So yeah, so I have a few that I can remember off the head, but I can't remember all of them because I wrote it down.
Yeah, I think
it's my old soul. I like to write things down instead of put it on my phone.
Yeah, no kidding. I hear you. The thing that would be added to the preamble for what we're asking for in terms of a law, which is kind of what I was speaking to, would be why we want the law. And there's a bunch of stuff, the disadvantages of the way it is now, besides discouraging people from participation. Just the manner in which it's done, the fact that we're being treated differently than the legislature, the fact that people have been volunteering for years for nothing, and when they finally get paid, they're penalized.
Right, and I think that's really important to be highlighted and also highlighting just some things that the council has done. You know what I mean? To help out the behavioral health systems. I think showing that rate of positive outcomes versus the compensation that individuals who are put in the work that can't even be compensated. Like a pat on the back goes a long way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And we definitely have been productive policy-wise, and in a lot of cases, we were doing more than just discussing the area that we're responsible for, which is the consumer constituency. And a lot of the other committees, Barbara can maybe speak to this because she attends some of the other committee meetings, but we actually try to make proposals and send them forward to be acted on. It's just getting them to act on them. Some visibility would help. So, and that's something we're still working on because the legislative process also requires visibility and who we are. That's one of the other things that would go in and help with the having some contact with the legislative offices, is telling them what we do and the things, how the council operates, and the things that we've come up with in the past and the use we might be. So, anybody else have any discussion on this effort? It's pretty well mapped out at this point, I think.
Barb has their hand raised.
Somebody have their hand up?
Yeah, it's me, Drake, Barb. And I just was gonna ask if the stuff that you're working on to get paid for doing OCAC stuff, if that trickles down to the counties at all, because I kind of remember last year, I think whether it was last year or the year before that, you guys working with, I think, O4AD, which is out of like DHS. But I wasn't sure when I think about it, how that would all fit in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And the answer pretty much is no.
Okay.
They go from volunteer to paying some stipends for the CCO committees. The advisory councils do not pay any per diem or stipend at all that I know of, at least where I am for certain. So it's pretty skimpy, and it's $50 per meeting and then $37 for subsequent other subcommittee meetings for the CCOs here. So, and there's no, and it's, you also get a 1099, which is another bummer. And they have no inclination at this point to change that from the standard issue. You know, stipend, here's your amount of money. You know, if you have too much income, sorry. That answer your question, Barbara? Barb, sorry.
I want to find out what that R stands for, Drake. No, thank you. And it did answer it.
Okay. Sorry, I keep calling Laura Rose Laura. And Rose has admonished me a couple of times at least about that. I've been friends with her for years too, and that's embarrassing.
Well, I just can't imagine that I would admonish anybody anytime.
Oh my God, you're the hammer. Are you kidding? My nose
Stein
is flat.
love the hammer.
All right, is everybody ready to go on to the next thing? Any other comments around the stipend stuff? I mean, there's a perfectly good reason for it, and it's really just, you kind of already know the kinds of excuses we'll get if it gets turned down or not paid attention to. But the legislature itself is paying itself in a different way. And the original idea was to pay us the same as the legislature. So there should be something on that. In answers to Walter's question in the chat as to whether this is already a recommendation, yes. We were charged with working out the details of getting the per diem out of an income-based reimbursement.
I'm going to ask to continue what Walter's press is. Is this on paper? Do we have it worded in an actual recommendation, the standard recommendation process we have?
Only as what I just, only as the sum of our meetings and whatever has been approved by the larger council, which I believe that is a yes. But the actual law itself has not been hammered out because we're trying to make that a cooperative venture with legislative council.
What is needed to make it a final product, Greg?
Please repeat, my phone speaker.
What do we need to do to make it a final recommendation?
When the law comes back to us from legislative council and we've worked out the exact wording, that would be the final determination that we would approve and endorse as a council.
So what are our next steps?
Just to make those contacts with the legislative council, and which I should have done already by now, but haven't, and the legislative offices to see if they have anything in particular to recommend or add to make it smoother.
Will you be able to do that before we meet again next month? Question mark.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have a special meeting before next month with the legislative people, and shortly after that have a pretty much good idea of where we're going with it. Because if they don't accept sponsorship, we will be talking directly with legislative council and at the back of the line. If they accept sponsorship, we'll need special permission from them to actually talk to legislative council to get the law written correctly. So, does that make sense?
Barb has her hand up.
Well, answer Drake's question. Did he make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I'm willing to offer myself up as somebody in Rob Nose's constituency, if that makes any difference for me to show my face at a meeting with you guys. That's it.
Anybody have any feelings about that? My sentiment is yes, and it might be important to have you at the meeting with them and between times too, if you're part of the constituency. If people are tolerant of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's not my Rolodex like Kevin, but yes.
I think there's
Sorry, I
value to
didn't-
having members of the community as well as council members in those discussions.
Repeat. Sorry.
I said, I think it's important to have members of the community and council in those discussions. So I think that would be very welcome for Barb to be there.
I don't know if Kevin will show up in the sense that he may have his own individual stuff and he gets kind of privative about that, where he wants to be having his own conversations based on his own lobbying, because he's got other things he's working on that are not directly related to us, but are something that we may eventually want to endorse because they affect the governor's budget and the peer budget and the governor's budget. So Barb would be great, be perfect, because they would not have heard from her yet.
And those of us that have met Representative Noss at Kevin's functions, you know, I can't help but think that maybe Kevin would be willing, I don't know, to help us with that. Because Kevin, you know, Representative Noss has been at social functions that Kevin has provided that some of the rest of us have attended and that we have met the representative. I'm really glad that Barb stepped up because I think that's a real positive. And I also think asking Kevin to help with it is okay. I think it would be a good thing.
We will.
Yeah,
And I
good.
was just expressing that sometimes Kevin steps out on stuff
Well,
like
yes, it's Kevin. Yes.
this.
Yes, he does. Bless his heart. And then sometimes he doesn't. So, yeah.
Okay, I think one thing that I do need a motion for and approval of is to try to schedule a special meeting with the representatives of the offices, either one or two, depending on their availability, before the next month's get together.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? We kind of already had the discussion, but any discussion? We'll try not to mung up anybody's holiday time.
Cool beans. I second that motion.
I thought we had a second. JD and Marquita would like to second that motion.
Second
All
for
right.
five.
All right. Any other discussion?
I did see Walter put a question in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, I think they talked about it, Marquita, a
Okay,
little bit. Yeah. All right. See checks.
Good. Approve.
Approve.
Okay. I vote in favor.
Okay.
Unanimous.
Yeah. For all of the.
All right. Motion passes. Let's go on to the next thing. We're running a little bit behind schedule here. Prior authorization. I still and may also at the same time as we bring these other things to these people's offices definitely want to mention the prior authorization efforts on our part. And though it may be eventually settled by a rule change, which is the division's responsibility rather than the legislators, the getting it on the radar of the problems that are being caused by the slowness in the authorization period is really important. And maybe it'll make them see fit to mandate something in law.
Well, and
But-
another part of the prior authorization reform that I have submitted is ways to minimize how many prior authorizations they have. If we have a statewide formulary, that doctors have an access to, then they don't have to do the guess and check every time they want to do a prescription or a service. So the quick turnaround time becomes more possible when done in the education level of the person who's hearing, when done within 24 hours, and when the doctors have the ability to see the formulary. And if we deny to formulary and not to over the counter, then we can make sure that there's no gap in service coverage.
Yeah, a very good idea. I'm assuming that's in the text of the 4 principles that we brought out initially, correct?
Yes, I resent it to you via email.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm sorry for the losing the first one.
I also requested a copy of or for me to watch the video from the special meeting so I can make sure that I didn't miss anything that's going to come down the pipe later. So I will make a neater proposal after I review what I said last time.
Okay. I think the special meeting had a lot of general discussion, and the division more or less kind of was supportive, but did not really have any answers for us for the stuff we asked. And we mostly just explained the stuff we already had in terms of legislative ideas. So the prior authorization, I don't remember how much of that was covered in that particular meeting, but I do believe it was given some attention. So
It did say that they were favorable to hear the recommendation. Would it be a good idea for us to have regular special meetings like every other month with the representatives that we talk to?
you know, until we're shut out of the legislative process, it's probably a really good idea. That's my 2 cents. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Because we need people to attend.
I think it's a good idea. I think it'll just help build that rapport and that relationship that's needed.
Barb asked in the chat, who from OHA was at the special meeting?
Okay.
Pretty sure Isra was there, right, Greg?
Yeah.
Was that it? Because I know I wasn't there. I don't know if Sharm or Kendall was there. It might have just been Isra, but you guys probably would have to tell us.
I can always look when I look at the recording to double check, but I'm pretty sure it was just Isra from OHA.
Okay.
Something people might be aware of is on the council website, they have the full recordings of the meetings. And if you're not sure if you attended, this is for purposes of reimbursement or other, you know, things you might need it for. If you run through the timeline pretty quickly, it's pretty easy to see who speaks. There's enough of a space in between those changes that if you're there, you will be able to see it by slowly, you know, parsing through the timeline. It takes a minute or two, but you can usually find, especially if you've commented and your camera's turned on, find yourself that way. So if there's any question of whether you were there or not that comes up, that's an easy way to verify that.
There's also a spreadsheet that Isra made in Excel for attendance tracking. People make mistakes, just like with the week not being marked as present for the last one that we did the agenda for, but it does exist, and it's good to review that to make sure that your records match theirs.
Do you know who's doing that while Israel's gone for this holiday time?
That is a great question.
No, could the ORR people take that back to Israel out of this? And I'll also email her.
Drake, I have 2 questions before I go today too.
Yeah.
When you get
Luke, you're up unless somebody else already has their hand up.
Number one, Drake, is can you send me some information about the health-related services discussion you mentioned today? There's been some developments around that issue. I want to be able to be part of the process as much as possible. It relates to the wellness support activities here in Oregon. The other thing is about the last special meeting. I brought up the Peer Center of Excellence and the workforce stimulation focuses, and we didn't get a really good idea of how to go forward, and I'm kind of worried that it's going to fizzle. Those are both really big focuses in my opinion. Do you have anything to say about that, Jim? Or
the second one we have not gotten. I do not personally have any updates on the governor's budget process. And as far as I know, our best source of information should be whoever suggested the peer budget. And we think it's the ORR. So if you ORR guys would like to track that down and find out what the proposal was that got it $10 million of peer services stuff into the governor's budget and Center of Excellence suggestion that's in there, that would really be helpful, because then we know who we're talking to and what their intention was and what the available opportunities are.
Yeah, thank you. This is really important. I feel like somebody got their foot in the door, but nobody's really wanting to point out the elephant in the room. My intuition suggests that Bo spearheaded it, and without Bo part of the process now, it could be fumbled. So I'm really hoping that somebody in the ORR can take up that ball. It's a big opportunity we don't want to see missed, in my opinion. Thanks.
It's really important it stays in front of the governor's staff as well. It's not a particularly small amount of money, so that it would be so insignificant as to be forgotten. But it could get lost if the advocates within the division are not there. Or reduced, which is more our style in the past.
Yeah.
Hey
Anyway,
everyone, this is Sharmalee. I'm going to jump in real quick. It is true that Bo spearheaded that effort, and so I personally and the rest of the ORR, we're not sure where we're at with that 10 million ask, but we also, none of us want that to get lost. We want it to stay in the forefront. So during our next team meeting, we'll check in with Maria and Brittany and chat with them about it.
Oh, thank you so much.
The last thing, if we're done with this agenda item, the answer to your first question, Luke, could you just repeat it?
Oh, yeah. You mentioned at the beginning the health-related services discussion today. The budget is being re-examined because it's not being managed well in Oregon. CCOs and, social determinants of health, health-related services, that discussion you said there was some...
Yeah, we can discuss that offline or off meeting only on the condition that it does not become a subject of a motion, or if it doesn't congeal into some kind of action or agenda item on the council. So that's the qualification for doing that.
Yeah, just send me what information.
But yeah, I'd be happy to share what I have, and in that sense, any documentation I come across or any emails I come across, I'll be happy to forward to you without any opinion.
Thank you. I'm going to get going then. Good day, everyone. Thanks.
Good to hear from
Bye,
you.
Luke. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Luke.
Hi, Luke.
The last thing I had that we're going to have time for the most part, we won't have much time to discuss any of the congressional efforts around upgrading benefits or things like that. And I already mentioned earlier the civil rights cases that are going on right now in the state. But the housing cards, which are fairly straightforward suggestion, is a really much easier ask in that it's fairly simple. Just says created dedicated housing accounts for people. And I did some of the math on it. And it would take between $300 and $700 a month to subsidize most people's rent, to make their rent affordable in the area that they live in. If you multiply that out times whatever Medicaid is, it comes out in the $8,400 range per year. But if you take the Medicaid match, if it's taken out of Medicaid dollars, we only pay a third of it in Oregon. So that would cut it down to each subsidy at maximum value of $700 would be $2,882, I think was what the final figure was, which is a very reasonable amount because that basically covers an emergency room visit, which they're paying for all the time. And, you know, all of the health related problems that having stable housing solves are certainly worth more than that. So selling that to a legislative body, I think, would be very easy, especially when they're hard pressed to find, you know, they're digging everywhere to find money to build stuff and make stuff. And this would be an easy way to just simply expand Section 8. And it would be a SDOH health services related type expense. So very much if they can fund certain other housing projects and Medicaid, they can certainly think about this. So I think it might be popular too, as a way to do something immediately for people that are stuck in the mental health system and can't find places to live, which is a total disaster. I mean, if you want a life disaster, being homeless is one. Being homeless and mentally ill is just multiplies it. And forgive me for using the term mentally ill. Being homeless, labeled, and or stigmatized, I guess would be how I'd put it.
Well, it's kind of hard to be homeless and not go through trauma.
I'll say. Yeah, and I mean, we haven't even touched on the thing that I'm most interested in, which is the thing that came out of the surveys that we were doing last year, was prevention. Most of it, you know, a lot of the homelessness has a real easy prevention aspect, but nobody's really spending the money on that stuff, like keeping people in housing and having early warning systems where people are about to become unhoused. Because if you can stop that part, all the other expensive stuff that happens after that is prevented. But it's the hardest thing in the world. We've had this problem with peer services for years, in that people will not listen to arguments about prevention and having not to spend a bunch of money. They only listen after systems have expended great amounts of money or tried to modify the systems spending great amounts of money by cutting down available funds or budgeting it differently. You go to them and say, hey, you'd have a lot less people in the hospital if you had more community support. That argument has never, ever, ever succeeded with any great deal of success. Anybody, we have public comment time. Anybody else have any other comments about the housing thing or anything else they want to bring up real quick?
I don't have anything. If you're waiting on me.
Thanks for being here, JD. And thanks for sending me that email. That really helps. And My apologies again. Okay. Anybody else have any other comment before we sign off? Any ORR folk have any ideas that you would like to bring out here, or prospects for stuff that's happening in the future? We kind of gave people an early shot that only Walter and Mireya were here, I think, at the very beginning.
Well, I have a question, but then I don't know if it's an appropriate question, and I don't know that it's appropriate to ask it here, but I've been gone. Where's Bo?
That's an inappropriate question, unfortunately. Nobody can answer it.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe he'd gotten a job someplace else.
At least the times I've asked, they've just said it's not discussable.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, all we can say right now is that Bo is still on leave.
Oh, okay.
All right, everybody?
Mhm.
Everybody happy? You ORR guys are experiencing loss of personnel right now. Is there anything we can do to help that way or advocate for?
I think maybe just give us grace while Isra is gone and while we're trying to figure everything out to support you all. But thank you for asking that, Drake. Really appreciate it.
For
As
sure.
in the Church of the Subgenius, we are giving you maximum slack.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You know, the big thing that I just want to echo to you guys with all of what you guys do from OCAC is, my question was, you guys have had so much great information, and I think just kind of tailoring those your thoughts into a formalized way of the recommendation. I really think, if at some point we'll get to that point, but it's like that information today was super important, and I feel like those are the things, if they're in that recommendation form, whatever you guys create, those are the things that we can not only support, but push that up the line. So just something for you guys to think about, recommendation and how you make those recommendations and how you guys solidify it. So when you're looking at that element, I mean, I just love what I heard today was really some concrete information. So
We've started to map out the paperwork production for that, the written stuff today, and should have something for you fairly shortly for all of the things we've discussed today, for the most part. Except for perhaps the governor's budget thing, which we're still kind of black box over. So,
okay.
Thank you, Walter.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
job,
thank you, Walter. Thank you. Because, sometimes some of us just go along like we know things when we don't. And the more information that we get, well, the more information that Barb gets, I think.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You got that, Barb? You were the
Yeah,
archivist.
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot on my shoulders there, guys.
Yes,
Right, we expect you to carry that bill all the way through to passage.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
Thanks,
thanks for
y'all.
letting me hang out with you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.